It's time now for French Connections, our weekly look at the intricacies of life here in France with Florence Villeminot. Hi, Flo. Now, this week we're going to focus on prostitution in France, what the law says, and what French people think about it. Prostitution laws have been in the spotlight recently after a lawmaker from the far-right National Rally Party said he wanted to make brothels legal again.
That's right, and this would put France in line with other European countries like Germany, the Netherlands, Austria, Switzerland, and Greece, where brothels are legal. Now, in French, a brothel is a maison close. It's our expression du jour, a closed house. They are also sometimes known as maisons de tolérance, so houses of tolerance, and they've been illegal in France since 1946. But once upon a time, they were quite ubiquitous. For instance, during the Belle Époque in the 1870s, there were some 200 licensed brothels here in Paris. Prostitution was not just tolerated, it was legal and regulated. Prostitutes were registered with the police and had regular medical checkups, for instance. Now, there is a certain fascination with these temples of pleasure, nostalgia even, but you got to remember that these brothels were most of the time a trap for the women who worked there.
Tout ce qu'elle va consommer, d'abord ses habits professionnels, qu'on va lui vendre évidemment à des prix insensés, l'alcool, éventuellement le tabac, etc., sa nourriture, son logement vont lui être comptés à charge. Eh bien, en réalité, elles n'arrivent jamais à payer leurs dettes.
Well, these days, pimping, what they call proxénétisme here in France, and running brothels are criminal offenses, but prostitution is legal.
It's a delicate legal balancing act. Officially, France is an abolitionist country. Its public policy is the eradication of prostitution. But selling sex is not illegal. In fact, sex workers are considered self-employed. They can, in theory, declare income, etc. But in reality, safety, health access, and right protections essentially remain inconsistent. So the result is a system that neither bans sex work nor truly supports those who do it. And this tug of war between regulation and eradication is almost as old as what we call le plus vieux métier du monde, the oldest profession.
Certains spécialistes considèrent la prostitution comme un cancer de la société qu'il faut supprimer. Pour d'autres, il s'agit d'un mal nécessaire qu'il faut réglementer très strictement.
Now, for years, prostitution laws were quite chaotic in France, but in 2016, there was a major shift in the legislation. Walk us through the legal framework.
Well, essentially, lawmakers decided to shift the criminal burden from prostitutes to clients, because before 2016, public soliciting, le racolage, had been illegal, and in 2016, it's paying for sex that became illegal. So these days, if you're caught paying for sex in France, you risk a fine or even jail time, depending on the circumstances. And meanwhile, sex workers became not criminals but victims to protect. And so there's now an envelope of money to try and help sex workers get out of the trade. And foreign sex workers who are actively trying to get out of prostitution can also apply for a residence permit, because you have to keep in mind that of the estimated 30,000 prostitutes in France, 90% are foreigners, mainly from Eastern Europe and Africa.
Now, the 2016 law brought France in line with Nordic countries like Sweden, Norway, Iceland, but at the time it was met with mixed reaction.
That's right. On the one hand, you had anti-prostitution groups, including a lot of feminist groups, that argue that prostitution is a form of violence and most prostitutes are victims of human trafficking and abuse, and so they applauded this new law, which shifted the shame and the blame.
Les personnes prostituées ne sont plus considérées comme des délinquantes. Quand elles sont agressées, elles pourront aller porter plainte dans un commissariat de police, ce qu'elles n'osaient jamais faire jusque-là.
Now, others, on the other hand, including many prostitutes, argued that this law wouldn't make prostitution disappear. It would simply push it out of sight, and it would actually make it harder for them to do their jobs.
Demain, on va être en précarité totale. Le client sera frustré de ne plus pouvoir venir nous voir. Et nous, on sera frustrés de ne plus pouvoir travailler et d'apporter de l'argent à l'État.
Il faut arrêter avec l'idéologie. La prostitution va continuer à exister en France. Nous sommes toujours là. C'est simplement qu'on va nous forcer à exercer dans des conditions pires et ça va être plus dangereux pour nous.
So that's what people thought nearly 10 years ago when this law was first put into place. What's the situation like today?
Well, a lot of the business has moved indoors into private apartments and hotels. And on top of that, authorities speak about an Uberization of prostitution, where clients and sex workers will connect via online platforms and websites, etc. etc. Now, what those prostitutes were saying before the law was put in place, a lot of that has actually happened. The fact that they've been driven out of sight, well, many say that they're in a more precarious and dangerous situation. And as for the clients caught, well, the numbers have been pretty anecdotal. There hasn't been a massive awakening amongst clients about the plight of sex workers. And as for that help that was promised to the prostitutes wanting to leave the profession, well, here again, aid workers say there's just not enough.
Mon sentiment, c'est que ça ne va pas assez vite, mais que cette loi est quand même importante. Elle aide, elle fait sortir des personnes et, de l'esclavage sexuel. Quand elles viennent nous voir et qu'elles ont envie de s'en sortir, on est là et pour les aider. Et on aimerait avoir plus, oui, c'est ça, on aimerait avoir plus de moyens.
So over the decades, the blame has really been tossed back and forth between the client and the prostitute. But critics say the law doesn't actually really, attack the key problem, which is human trafficking and the mafia. And it's unclear whether bringing back brothels to France would really fix the problem. If you look at countries like the Netherlands, for instance, while brothels have helped bring sex workers out of the underground, it hasn't really solved their plight on issues of trafficking or even stigma.
All right, Flo, thanks so much for that. That's Florence Villeminot there with the latest French Connections. Don't forget, you can take a look at any of our previous French Connections on the website. Be sure to check it out, france24.com.